On the dot, and I'd like to call to order the get the right agenda in front of me with the right date on it, the August 24th meeting of the Georgetown Divide Public Utility District Finance Committee. Welcome everyone who can be with us, everyone who can be online. We will begin with a pledge of allegiance, and may I ask Mr. Miller to lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That moves us on to item number 2 on our agenda today, which is the adoption of the agenda. Do anyone have any comments on the agenda itself from the committee or from the public before we adopt today's agenda? No. Hearing none. Do I have a motion?
Move to adopt the agenda. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Our agenda is adopted. Our next item on the agenda is our public forum. Any member of the public may address the Finance Committee on any matter within the jurisdictional authority of the Finance Committee. Other items that are on the agenda, which we will take in their turn. There's some language here on the agenda that talks about being orderly, but I know everybody I see in the room and around is orderly anyway, so I won't read it all. So given that, is there anyone from the public in the room to begin with, and then online that has any comments this morning, any public or this afternoon meeting? Yes, sir.
Now, this is Stephen Dow. This is just about finance stuff, or can I say anything?
You can say anything you like, or maybe not. We may not be able to address it if it's something that we can't address as a finance committee.
Okay, Nick, I went by the other day by the 2 trees that I told you guys about. Somebody cut down 1 tree right near there. They didn't get the 2 trees that need to come down. And I swear that the tree is right from the ditch. The ditch is right there and it's this far away. If that tree goes over, it's gonna raise up that ditch. That water's gonna go right down the road. So, and then they're dead. So, and I thought, I went back, I doubled back because I thought, oh, they got it, yay. Because I saw, stuff on the side.
Yeah, I think Adam's aware of it. I'll make sure he works with the property owner. As I stated before, there's not a lot we can do because they're not our trees and they're not our property. We can ask,
It's our
request.
ditch.
It is our ditch, but just because our ditch is there doesn't mean that we own the property, own
It's
the
gonna
trees.
take the ditch out, I swear.
That is a complication.
You have a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. It's not my turn.
I'm done.
Any others?
We'll go online.
Do we have a comment online?
That's right.
Hello.
Good afternoon. This is Sheree.
Hi.
You have the floor, Sheree. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a comment on the unfunded CalPERS liability that I brought up at the last meeting. I did a search of the website and found that on 11/13/2018, Brandon Young, assurance manager at LSL's CPA, at the time was the district's external auditors, presented an alternative information and options concerning the district's CalPERS unfunded liability planning. So I went to those meeting minutes, but it does not show up in those meeting minutes. But when you do a search, it shows up on the district website that there was a presentation. So, and it's something to do with the firm that purchases the unfunded CalPERS, like they pay it off, and then somehow you let them do the funding. And then there was also something in December 2021 that Steve Miller brought up with the previous general manager, and something about videos and information on it. The other thing, the last 2 emails that I received from the district show that it's coming from Georgetown Water and not GDPUD. Also, the website meeting packet for today has GPUD and GUPD as file names. There should be some consistency in the district's name. Thank you.
Okay, we do have that noted. I've got 2 different dates I'll just turn back to staff to take a look at that during the coming
Yeah, we can.
intermediate period.
I think I have an idea as to what it is that you're referring to. It is called a pension trust that you can set up through a very similar organization that we use now called California Class or Cal Trust. They are it's an investment vehicle that you can put money into that will help you to lessen those unfunded liabilities. So it is an option. We have explored these options. Right now, we are still working under what CalPERS has and their percentages of it's not repayment. It's I'm so sorry. You're kind of catching me without having all the information in front of me, but I'd be happy to discuss this further with you. If you want to come in, we can talk about what this means, or we can try to find that presentation for you.
Okay, so the presentation dates, I think 11, 13, 18, and then one from December of 21. So you take a look for those.
I would also like to see those.
Sure.
I have a question.
Sure. Miller, just a minute.
Is that, just a question, is that stump in a right of way, not an easement for Caltrans or something like that to deal with?
I believe it's on a property that is owned, whoever owns that corner, it's a person's property. It's like a private property.
Okay, it's not right on the road. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's doesn't, okay, so just because it's in a right of way doesn't mean that we can cut it down. We still have to do some research. If you find out the property owner's name, then let us contact them, let us talk to them. That would be the best thing for us to do, is to reach out to that property owner.
yeah, the ditch is probably from me to you from the road, and the tree is in between, right in the middle, and it's on a little hill, and the tree's leaning over, and two trees, and they're dead. They're like this. Those roots, when they come up, rip off. We're gonna tear the ditch apart.
Thank you.
And we just did the ditch, relined it a couple of years ago, remember? It was like 3 years ago, we redid that ditch right there.
Okay, thank you.
That is an interesting question. So if you have a tree, or it could be anything that threatens your infrastructure, but it's not within your easement, it's next door, is that what's generally the?
We can ask, we can also, there are some things we can do if they pose a great liability. However, it would be something we'd have to adjudicate to be able to remove.
Okay.
It's not an easy process. We can't just go in there and cut it down, because they're gonna claim the value of that tree, and then we have to pay for it.
They're dead.
I know Caltrans is always removing dead limbs hanging over the road, and if this was to fall over on the road, like a limb would fall on the.
They do that because they have a safety easement, because they have a safety element of the fires. That's why they do it. Ours is not the same. We do not have the same jurisdiction, but I will get a legal opinion on it, and I'm actually sending an email right now to Adam so that we can figure this out next week.
Good, thank you.
All right. Any other comments from the public? Hearing none, move on to item number 4, which is approval of minutes from July 27th. I did have a couple of typos I'll bring up, but I'll turn it over to anyone else on the committee. Did any others? Any comments?
No.
None.
No.
I will just mention, let's see, under items number 7 and 8, there were 2 references, one to Andy Miller and one to Chairman Miller. I recognize a Freudian slip when I see one, and I might all like to have Mr. Miller back as chairman, but I think both of those references were to comments I made Andy Fisher.
So you're telling me you'd be offended being related to me?
Yes.
That's all I had. If nothing else, do I hear a motion for approval of the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes with those typo corrections are approved. And now I'll turn over item number 5A and 5B to our general managers for updates on grant update and then financial reports.
I will do a quick grant update. If you received the Georgetown Gazette, we had a nice front page article that was written by Liz that they put in about our fire grant that we received. So Fire Safe on the Divide was a $1.2 million grant that was awarded to us. That is, again, great news. We're still waiting for some paperwork coming from the state before we can make the purchases and do what we have to do, but it should be a great asset for the Divide community, building some fire breaks and protecting our infrastructure. The Bureau of Reclamation has put out a grant opportunity for Water Smart, so we are exploring that. And we are also exploring a EPA stormwater grant opportunity. And we have some projects that are in the upper watershed that we are going to try to utilize some of that funding to capture an old water right that we have, Onion Creek, and we utilize some funding from the federal government to revitalize that water right. That is my grant update.
Yes, sir. We'll open it up to public.
Yes, Nick, you said that the $1.2 million is it in our coffers?
Not yet.
Oh, they gave us a letter and said it's in, but we haven't got it yet.
Basically, the way it is they have awarded the funds. We now have to do, it's a whole bunch of legal paperwork, kind of like entering into a contract with the state. And so that is what the process we're in right now. We'll have it probably in about three more weeks, three to 4 more weeks.
Oh, I thought it was in already.
Well, when you get the letter, you're locked in. You can't say you're locked in until you get the, hey, you're locked in letter. And we've gotten that locked in letter. So the money is here. We just have to continue to sign off and do paperwork. You know, it's just like when you buy a house, you got to go through the escrow period. It's a very similar process to that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from online or from other committee members? No. Hearing none, move on to item 5B, financial reports. Are you taking that one?
Yes, I am.
All right.
The same reports you get every single time. So I don't know if you want to just ask if you had any questions about where we are so far in July.
July is a hard, everything's still kind of truing up and initial bills are coming in. So it's a little hard to get takeaways from July until you get a little ways into the year. It gets a little hard. Is there any standout items from your perspective? I mean, I see a lot of, 91%, 95%, 100% remaining, which all looks pretty healthy if we take we're 1/12 of the year through the fiscal year. Anything in your mind standing out, any anomalies in this
No.
year's budget yet?
But if you, if I were to run these reports again today, they'd be a little bit different because I was able to true up all of the accounts payable that split the month of June and July. So we have numerous monthly bills that are from June 15th to 7/15th or July 15th that we pay for. And so all of those have been split and allocated to the right fiscal years.
Okay.
So it is a little bit different right now in the GL than what you're seeing printed out. Other than that, I think we're on track.
So the fund summary shows us page 6 of 6 on the report. Can you just run through that? You got original budget, just water fund, original budget, current budget, and then period activity, a negative 796,000.
Yeah, there's something that needs to be tweaked. This is what happened last year as well when we entered the budget in. For some reason, it's showing it as not like a budget that you're doing budget to actuals against, but as a actual monetary charge. And then so when you have debits that come out, it's giving it a negative number. And I'm not sure why. It's within the system and I have Lewis looking into it right now, but we're more focused on getting the audit finalized.
Yeah.
Because I know I looked at all the entries and all the entries are correct. So I'm not sure why it's giving it negative numbers.
Okay.
It's adding our fiscal activity, which that's not a correct number. I mean,
No,
if you look at it,
Right.
It's adding them together, which it shouldn't be.
It looks great. Look,
Exactly.
4.5 million in the black in the first month of the year.
Yeah, right?
That's,
That'd be nice.
okay.
Which should be.
And it should be about a couple $100,000
Yeah.
or $500,000.
So I guess I'd say that this July report, just by nature of some glitches in the system and the fact that everything's still truing up, really does need quite an asterisk next to it.
Yeah, we probably won't have the final numbers for any of this until September.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's usually a 90-day window where
And
we true everything up.
it comes to be where you are splitting invoices, you're splitting billing payments, because if people pay a bill and they pay part of last year's bill and part of this year's bill, they literally have to go down and figure out how much goes in last year, how much goes in this year. So it's quite a undertaking to ensure that all of the money is lined up just right.
Yeah. No, I know in my other, my paid job, I realize the same kind of thing. You're a little bit blind for the first couple of months of your fiscal year as everything trues up. I think one question maybe to think about for next year is it publishable for prime time? Is this is a published record? Do we want to maybe simplify it way down for the first month or two until we actually have good enough records that, the public without that knowledge can take a look and.
Well, we can also run the budget dashboard quarterly too. Because we do have the check reports and the vendor purchasing report where you can see every month what's been paid.
Yeah.
And then the front sheet of the staff report shows you, what our expenses are and how much we have left in the budget.
Right.
Yeah.
And the percentages. So, and this is true.
Okay.
I think you'd be better served by doing it on a quarterly basis rather than something that's not quite accurate, but not representative.
And we don't do a hard close every month.
Yeah.
So
I would prefer quarterly.
it takes about 3 weeks to do all the bank reconciliations and everything. That hasn't been done yet for July.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Yes, sir.
Yes, how have we progressed with the delinquent account? Are we all caught up on them? Everything paid up? Getting good?
That's what tax lien's for.
Yeah, so that's not really something we can comment on right now, but yeah, we do a tax lien every year. And so so everybody starts at scratch once you do tax liens.
Mhm.
Any others? Let's see anybody online. With that, let's move on to the big item of the day. Item number 6, review of our audit, which we have
Yeah.
a more complete form in front of us.
So this is the final audit. There is some documents in here that were just kind of hot off the presses given to you. Something, in my couple things in my review I noticed, and I'll just give you a kind of a 30,000 kind of foot overview of this, and then I'd like to just take any questions that you all have. So there's an internal controls memo that goes with this, and they, as the auditors, did find a few things that were kind of not in sync. There was no issues, so to speak. But what they are saying is some of the internal controls during this time period were out of alignment with the GASB standards of the time. And what ended up happening was there was a previous general manager who was kind of building and approving certain parts of the budget and certain parts of the financial statement. And there was no control aspect to how those were developed and how those were approved. There wasn't kind of a second look at some parts of it. Now, when they looked back at it, nothing was amiss, nothing was wrong. It's just kind of this like, hey, have a second set of eyes look at this. Don't just do this on your own. I want to make sure I'm capturing this correctly, Jessica, because I know you.
But we do that now. This was before.
I haven't gotten there yet. Am I capturing kind of what their issue was?
There's a checks and balances. So they want internal controls where one person initiates the journal entry and a second person reviews and approves.
So there was basically nobody kind of checking these journal entries. They were just being approved. They were entered and approved by the same person. So that's not really industry standard. And now, so Jessica enters any journal entries that need to be entered. And then we have our accountants, which is LSL, approving those on their end. So there's a kind of a check and balance. There's multiple people who are looking at this and not just, signing off on something that shouldn't be signed off on. So that was one of the things that was kind of a little bit of significance. Again, still clean audit. The other thing that we noticed, if you go to page, I finally have page numbers too, by the way, if you noticed, that was a revelation. Page number 9, something that I kind of noticed, and it's actually in the, in the opening section, but I kept reading this and it says the operating expenses increased by $1.8 million. And I thought, wow, that's a considerable increase in operating expenses. So Jessica did some research, and just before it comes up as a question, it appears it's pension funds that were not being spent correctly or not being allocated correctly. They weren't. We weren't reporting them. We weren't submitting our payments to the pension to CalPERS. So if that comes up, you'll notice that there's a considerable range that this went from 1.6 million to almost 3.6 million. So
Okay.
it's a big jump, and I want to just kind of explain that that's where we have determined that's the biggest thing that's out of place from the 2 years. So with that, I'd love to have some questions from the committee. After that, anything from the public. And then Jessica, if you have anything to add, please.
Yeah, because we were speaking about this after these packets have been produced, I just wanted on the record that was OPEB and the GASB 68. And it was $1.9 million.
It's 1.925 million. Yeah, we have it. We have the printout record of it.
Questions from the committee?
Well, that was one of my first questions was it shows up on page 9 under administrative expenses, why it was so high.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. I have a question on page 6. I think I'm working off the draft. So there's a reference to, it's the last paragraph under future financial statements. As fiduciary funds are used to account for resources held for the benefit of parties outside and within the city. It shouldn't be the city, right? Isn't it the district?
So I don't
makes
see on page. Oh, it's page 6.
Page 6, Nick. Right. It's the last paragraph under reported financial statements.
It says district and mine. So
Does it?
It looks like we've updated it.
Okay. Because it's not. Okay. Good.
Just read it one more time because I want to make sure.
Sure. It says fiduciary.
City within the. I see it. Sorry.
That just didn't make any sense to me. I think it should be district.
Above it refers to district, and there apparently a typo which referred to.
So I think some of this stuff is kind of boilerplate.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a boilerplate situation. I can have them edit that. Can you just make a note of that, Jessica?
I'm actually having them under the internal controls. Some of the things that they spoke about, we talked about it today with LSL, that they're going to have them amend some of that too, because they just didn't have all of the data.
Yeah. So page 6, the last paragraph of required financial statements. This is place.
Places on there.
It's a good catch. Anything else? This is just a typo, and hopefully not the numbers.
No, that's it. I think it's just a typo. No, based on what I see and based on the comments, it's a clean audit. It looks pretty good to me. It looks pretty thorough, and it looks pretty good. The open questions are the things that, the pension plan issue is just a big issue that everybody that's involved with CalPERS is going to have to face at some point. That's why I'd be interested to see what, if anything, was proposed. I was telling Elizabeth, we went through this in a private way back in 1994 was when FASB changed it over, and we had to account for pension liabilities, or not just pension, but also retiree medical liabilities that were pay as you go, weren't on the books. And when we finally determined what the liability was, it was $600 million, which was equal to our shareholder equity. And we actually became bankrupt, technically bankrupt, when we didn't have to fund it, but we had to recognize it. After that, a bunch of people came in, oh, we'll help you with these liabilities. Our experience was probably not, because you've got an issue with CalPERS not saying, oh, that's fine, just turn it over, then we'll take whatever they go. Plus you have to fund it. So I would be interested to see what, if anything, is being proposed to help with that, because it's a huge drain that, it's not necessarily anybody's fault in the district, in the room, or anything else. It's a question it's a bigger problem statewide. So
It is, yeah. And I'll give you some, we just did get an email from CalPERS. Basically, they anticipated 6.8% return and only received a 5.8% return. And so there's another 1% of gap that they're, now seeing. And this is, it is not just a district here issue. This is, as you stated, it's a statewide issue. So unfunded liabilities are something that we, as taxpayers, not just the district, are going to be facing for a while. It is unfortunate, maybe not the right word, but the state has kind of promised these pensions, and they have to now back their promise. Unfortunately, when they did their investing, 2008 hit them considerably hard with the market collapse, and they have not been able to recover from that since. When 2008, before all that happened, they were well on track to being able to have no unfunded liabilities. Unfortunately, the market correction in 2008 really hit hard.
the only other comment that I have, and this may be a somewhat sensitive issue, but under operating revenues, under your MD&A, the operating revenues are not covering your costs. And it just seems to me at some point, and nobody wants to talk about raising rates, but I think what's important is the extra work that's been done to make sure you don't have to raise rates. And that's the way I read this. I read that, the district is doing a really good job at trying to hold the line on the rates. And the question is, people ought to recognize that and understand it. So if and when we have to raise rates, they understand that, look, we have spent, the last rate was 2012, is that what I read? 2018. That was for the irrigation water though, right?
It was for both.
Was it for both?
I think 2019 was when the last time treated water went up. Irrigation stayed the same for 2018 to 2019.
It just seems to me that the district, both this administration and prior, did a pretty good job of trying to hold the line on it. And I think the public needs to understand that. Because if and when something happens, I think I mentioned, from what I understand, the life expectancy on most dams is about 60 years, and our dams are beyond that. Now, I think we talked about maybe it's 100 years or whatever. I'm just, it's a general statement from, Society of Civil Engineers. And at some point we may be facing some significant costs. And I just think that it's a good story to tell. And I think the public needs to be aware of the efforts that have been done to hold the lines on rates for the individual.
Yeah, we're every 5 years, every district is required to do a 218 process. Mm-hmm. And so we are going to be getting that process. We're actually working on developing RFPs for both our raw water and wastewater processes. And we're going to be doing that process to see where we are, where the crossovers are, how we can mitigate, rate increases or how we can minimize them if they're needed.
I did want to follow up because we're looking at these tables on revenue on page 8. And you do see the decreased revenue in all sales categories, commercial, commercial even, but residential and irrigation sales going down. In spite of the fact that we did have a rate increase a few years ago. How do you see this trend? What do you attribute the decreased sales to?
So the 2.9 or 2.87 right there, that's where we've been the last 2 years. So that's where we anticipate being. So it hasn't gone down since then. So I'm not sure why there's a change into, $250,000 change in this fiscal year. I can't answer that. Do you have
COVID. We weren't allowed to send people to tax lien.
That
We
is
weren't
true,
allowed
That's
to
true.
turn off water for non-payment. Because we keep track of tax lien, when I did my first tax lien last year, there were numerous people, like dozens of people that should have gone every single year. But we didn't get that revenue in.
For 18 months, we weren't able to
18
shut it
months,
off.
we weren't
People
able to shut
could have
them
just
off.
not paid their bill.
But for COVID, why did that show up in 22 and not? Because
Because
21 was more.
20
That
22
was
is
the
when
height of
they
COVID.
stopped the
20
moratorium on turning off water.
No. But if you look at fiscal year 2021 would be when the fiscal year 21-22.
Our first tax lien not even tax lien, our first termination of water service for non-payment was October of 2022.
But that'd have been after the
I
fiscal
know.
year.
That's
So
what
that'd
I'm
been
saying,
the
all
next-
that
that'd been the
revenue
next
was
fiscal
not
year.
included because this isn't what we billed for water. This is what we received in payments. So,
That's a question I have. We've been using less water because of conservation. How much are we reducing on the sales? What percentage is that of that number is due to less consumption?
I would say I'm sure there's a factor in there, but I don't think it's as great a factor as, I didn't even think about COVID. That's absolutely where this is coming from. Because 2021 wouldn't have been, that'd have been basically after this started. Part of it would be in 21, but more of it would have been hit in 22. Because when did the moratorium hit? That would have been May or
in the medical field then, so.
no, I'm trying to remember. It was May or June of 2020
Mhm.
of 2020, and so then it went for 18 months after that.
Because I know that I was looking through the records when I first got here.
Mhm.
And so about April 2022, there was already a board resolution to start turning off water because we were allowed to begin that process in June, but we didn't actually start until October, or it takes 90 days per the SB 998. They have to be delinquent for 60 days. So 30 days of billing cycle and then delinquent for an additional 60 days. So it's 90 days from the day the bill comes out that you can start turning water off for non-payment. So by the time we enacted that and had the board resolution, the first shutoffs were October of 2022. And that's when we started to recoup some revenues.
Okay.
So that's also when California started the LIWAP program also.
That's county.
Is it county? Okay, well, El Dorado County has they were just giving money to people who were delinquent and paying off their bills. And we still have lots of funds coming in from LIWAP. Low income
Water assistance program.
water assistance
There's
program.
low income housing and water assistance program.
Yeah, I think LIHWAP. We probably received about $20,000 last year from LIWAP.
So I guess the question I have is, do you want to make comment to that? Here, and the reason that, both Andy and I, it didn't quite resonate with us what's really happening. And I
Sure.
think that's a pretty good story. It's just a question of whether you want
Yeah, I think we
to
can.
state it or not.
I think it's not a bad idea to add that because it is a story. It is something to tell.
If you just look at the raw numbers, you say, well, how come we're off $250,000? Yeah, it's like the administrative thing. Why did it go up? And there's reasons for it.
Yeah.
We can add that to our management statement.
Yeah, it's an MDNA.
Yeah, that'd be good. Let's do that.
Okay.
Is there an anticipation of any recovery beyond what we've already received?
Once properties are sold, then we will get the money. So all that money is locked into a tax lien at this point. So anytime a title is changed or a property is sold or, what's the word? An estate is transferred, say to like if somebody dies, then we there's a word I'm trying to think of. It's a estate transfer, excuse me. When an estate transfers to a new owner, then we will receive the funds. Basically, we're one of the first government agencies to have a high tax lien status where we get kind of the first dibs.
All right, public comment.
Yes, there's 3 or 4 reasons why revenues are down over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. It all started with that 218. They BS'd us into a rate increase, and we were against it. The whole district was against it. And then they raised the rates, and then people started stopping using water. And I made a speech like 4 or 5 years ago at the RCC. There was RCC down in Garden Valley, Rural Communities Coalition. And I said, you need to be talking about increasing water usage or selling more water or encouraging people to use more water. You get money in when we use more water. You know, and then the COVID hit, and then there was the drought, and the state is telling us to cut back on our water usage. And I know people that were taking 1 shower a week. An old lady down here, that was disgusting. It's terrible. I mean, they were afraid to use water, and I said, use your water. We got water in the lake, you know. But they were scared to death about using water. It was just atrocious.
Steve will never be able to do that.
Huh?
We will never be able to encourage people to use more water. The
Yeah.
state will come down and fine us.
Yeah,
They will fine us $10,000 a day if we were to do that.
well, gotta fight. Gotta fight, resist.
The fight is they're going to come and they're going to hammer us into the ground. The fight is we don't have a leg to stand on in that fight.
Well, it's true of residential water. Is that true of irrigation water?
So there's a little bit of leeway with the irrigation water. We still have to be able to maintain our treated water loads, but yeah, we can't encourage raw water sales.
So you're saying, I'm saying use more water, but then you're saying use less water. So then you're gonna raise the rates. You raise the rates and people are gonna use less water, and they're really gonna use less water. You're gonna get less money coming in even though the rates are up. It's like a tax.
It is it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, you can't.
But we have to.
You gotta work for the people. You know, we're the people. You gotta work for us. Help us out.
But if we're okay, Steve, you're kind of preaching to the choir. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to tell you what our limitations are. We can't encourage the sale of more water. The state will absolutely not stand for that. And these are all state requirements that we have to do, rate increases, conservation mandates. Those are all things that we are out of our hands. You know, we are told what our urban water management plan, water shortage contingency plan has to say, the stages. So if we start running out of water, we're told how much percentage of conservation we have to encourage to you. So your fight is not with us, your fight is with Sacramento.
I've always wondered, we've got ends of lines everywhere. There's an end of a line right down here. And I've made statements before. Why don't we try to encourage, like you guys, to go and try and sell water to the people that are just 100 feet away, 200 feet away, extend that line. You got new customers, sell more water. And it's everywhere. You know it. It's all down in Cool, Pilot Hill. There's people right on the end of the line. And all you gotta do is talk to them and talk them into buying it.
Sure. Are you talking about raw water or treated?
Treated.
It's easier said than done. I mean, that's a $5,000 to $7,000 a connection cost.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of extra regulation and cost. And I totally agree with you. I wish it was different. I believe we have an online comment as well.
Cherie, go ahead and you got the floor here.
Okay, I have a question on the delinquent accounts. It was for fiscal year 2023. When the funds come in, because I thought it goes on their property bill that they have to start paying in December. So you should be receiving funds if they're paying their whole property bill. What fiscal year does that revenue apply to? This fiscal year, or is it backdated?
That's a good question. I would have to do some research on that, Sherry. I don't have that off the top of my head.
But I think instead of going as a tax lien, it's going to go on their actual property bill for the year, right?
Yeah, it shows up, but they're not required to pay it. It's like when you do a house project and somebody puts a lien on your property and you don't pay them, you're not taxed. You're not paid on your property taxes. It comes off when you pay off, when your house transfers.
So property, not a tax lien, not an actual El Dorado County tax lien.
It's the same.
You know,
I'm pretty sure it's the same thing. When you, let me get the exact answer to your question before I say anything else, because I want to make sure that I'm giving 100% accurate information.
Anything else?
I have a comment. Steve, ideally, to sum it up is, we have to go within the guidelines in the law and encourage conservation. And if we have a window we're trying to meet, let's say reduce 10%, but we only reduce 1%, we're still in good graces of the government, but that's 9% less, it's 1% less of revenue theoretically, but we're still, you see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
If that makes any sense, you know?
Unfortunately, that's not an accurate statement.
It's not.
If they're asking you to save 10%, if you were saving 1%, you are missing the mark.
But we're not going to get penalized. Is that not true?
I wouldn't say that on the record.
No.
Has anybody ever been penalized?
Yes. Yes.
Like, Beverly Hills?
There's a couple other ones as well. I would have to go back and look. I know there's 3 or 4.
Are the same conservation goals in place even after the last water year that we had from the state? I know that they take
Yes.
50 gallons per person per,
Yes.
all that kind of thing.
Nothing has changed.
Nothing's changed. Thank you, Sacramento, for nothing.
California.
So,
Basically, the thought process is the new conservation method is going to be a water budget that every district has to meet. And that will take effect in 2025. And so basically there's 4 different categories. It's indoor residential, and that's SB 1157 sets the standards for that. It's 47 all the way down to 42 gallons per capita per day starting in 2030. You have outdoor residential, which is a LAM or local area measurement report that is happening right now. And that has to do with where you live, how much grass, how many, what they call irrigable acreages you have. And then that's based on what your ETO is, or evapotranspiration rate is. You have the third one is water loss, which is SB 555 has set the standard for the water loss rate. And then you have the last one, which is commercial outdoor, which is kind of a weird, they look at how much water, not any of the processed water for a commercial establishment, but all of the kind of peripheral water use that a commercial establishment uses. So, if you're making dog food, they are not going to tell you how much water you need to use to make the actual dog food. They're going to tell you how much water you use for your landscape, your toilets, all the things that are going on besides the dog food manufacturing.
but given that we do live in an area where a high percentage of us have a high area of irrigable property, it might be a good opportunity to start thinking about that community-wide now. If there is allowance for irrigable property and we have a community interest in being green, if there's an opportunity there, seems like now would be the time to start thinking and talking about it strategically.
And just to give you a heads up, the irrigable acreage they look at does not include the trees. And it is a fight that we are fighting with the state of California right now. They basically say it's about 6% of our area is irrigable, and we don't agree. So we have been fighting with the Department of Water Resource and trying to show them that it's not how it looks on a satellite.
Right.
If you're on the ground, it looks a lot different than it does from a satellite.
Is that, wasn't it 1%?
It was, I think that started at 1 or 2%, yeah, and we've gotten to 6. So
Oh, that's news to me. That's good.
we're kicking butt. We're taking names.
What's the
but
goal, 20-ish?
Sixfold.
Yeah, sixfold. I would say you're probably in the neighborhood of 15 to 20. Yeah, it stinks. Yeah, I'll give a super quick example of when I was at my previous water agency. We were in the middle of the desert. Very, very easy to see what is the potential to be irrigated. Also, very big properties. So, similar area, multiple acreage properties, but nothing blocked the view. So you could see what was there, what could be there, and it was a lot different. Standard. And so we were about 25 to 30.
20 to 30. An example, when I looked into this earlier, I was using 700 gallons a day 10 years ago, and now I'm down to 400-ish. That's still way more than 100, which I need to be in a two-person household.
That is not true. That is not how that works. It's you're talking about indoor out only. So your 400 is all your outdoor landscape.
Right, right. That's what I'm using. That's what I'm using average per day.
So, but you're saying the 100 is not what you need to be at. It's not 100. It's 100 plus whatever your outdoor requirement is.
Right, but if I use the formula at 20% that Saunders plugged in the numbers, let me finish what I'm saying. I was way over 100, but I needed to be 100 for my indoor. But because at that time it was only 1%. I thought it was less than that, but it was 1%. If they used the 20% irrigable, my 400 gallons per day for two-person household was in. And that's an average throughout the year, because in the winter we use much less than 400. So what I'm saying is, Nichols, all I'm saying is, yeah, that's all I'm saying is.
It's really hard to look on a case-by-case basis.
Well,
You have to look at the whole
Well,
district.
people thought they were going to get fined, and I was just saying, well,
Yeah, no individual person.
right, and that's when I brought that up. Yeah, I was in at 400 when they counted 20% of the land, not 6% or 1.
Yep.
That's all.
let me pull it back. Great comments. And we got here by talking about declining revenue from declining use in part. But this is also, this is a little specialized of an issue having to do with the state guidelines and mandates. And I'd like to bring it back as a briefing and an issue in itself at some point during the year. Because I think this just dearly affects all of us with the state that we're already in and the next tiers of regulation and what can be done. So, if we could talk about that as an issue itself, I think that'd be great. But as it pertains to the audit, I think any other closing comments on the audit itself, or
We would like a motion from the committee to accept as a couple changes. I know that there was a change for the revenue where it had some COVID information, where it had some of that information. Then there was
typo?
couple typos out of the city. So we'll make those changes, but we would love to have the finance committee send this on to the board for acceptance.
Do I hear a motion?
I move to accept the audit.
With the changes. I hear a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We recommend the audit move on to the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Finance committee member, committee comments and reports. Anybody on the committee have any comments? In your notes? I want to applaud you again for the grants. I think that is no small feat. In my job, I apply for a lot, and you being able to secure them and present them in a way that they're successful is it's a big lift. The administration of them is a big lift. A $1.2 million grant is sizable. And so I just applaud you for that. It's a big deal.
It is.
It's also the ambition to do so, because there hasn't been the leadership or the will to get that done previously as it is now. So.
Comments? No? All right. Okay.
The only other comment is I would like to see quarterly reports as opposed to monthly, but that's just my own personal preference.
Well, if you all decide, that's fine.
We don't have an action on that. I think
we
let's
don't.
give it some thought.
I think we can add a quarterly report and still keep the monthlies in there and just add a quarterly as well.
Okay. Any agenda items for the next finance committee meeting that you'd like to see on there?
We will add a water budget so I can go over the process, because actually they have kind of finalized that report. So that's a good topic to bring in. And then Mr. Don, I would invite you to be here so we go over that together. So you can hear why, what the state is saying.
What day?
Oh, the next finance meeting.
Oh, okay.
Which brings us to the next finance meeting. Item number 9, our next regular meeting would be September 28th. Does that work for everyone?
Last Thursday of the month.
It's
Quick look at September 28th. September 28th, I already have on my calendar, so it works for me.
I do too.
All right.
We're doing something.
Mr. Chair, does anybody have any input on recruitment or for the finance committee?
We have put out a press release to seek that. I think we're still waiting to hear back from because that we heard anything.
We didn't pick up the press release, so I think we're gonna have to pay to run it, which is fine. This letter found that, so it goes out here in a couple weeks as well.
And still recruiting for the irrigation committee as well.
Yes.
What I pay for the finance committee member.
Oh, they make a ton. It's don't ask them.
Yes. Here's our payment. We get free water.
Brought my own.
Dorothy's okay, right? He's just not here. She's fine. Right?
Martha?
I mean, Martha.
Yeah, no, Martha is, she'll be back.
She'll be back, okay.
She told me she'll be back for the September meeting.
Yeah, that was the email we got. Should take a couple meetings up. She'll be back. All right, with that, do I hear a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion to adjourn.
First, there's a second, all in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. You got the gavel. I don't gavel anyway.
What's the